给你们看看啊，我现在就带了这个。
I'll show you. I'm staying in a place this terrible.
也不知道什么时候。
I don't know when we will be transferred away.
转走。
I can't stay in this kind of place anymore. I feel like
这
dying.
种地方啊，我实在是待不下去了，我想死的心都有了。
密密麻麻的。
Beds after beds, densely packed.
我们的隔离是为了不被
If you're afraid of infecting other people, it's likely to happen with this kind of quarantine conditions. If you're positive, it can get more serious. This is the big city of Shanghai. Don't say it isn't Shanghai. If you say it isn't, I will send you the location right now. You can come see for yourself. Douyin's comment section. I have been banned from posting comments. Can't comment. The quarantine camp hasn't been disinfected so far. Only at the door was it disinfected a bit. There is no disinfection inside. Alas, today, tomorrow, if there isn't any disinfection for 3 days in a row, the environment would be really bad. This is true. Today, more people have started coughing. They have been coughing incessantly, but no one bothers to check on us. This is Shanghai now, with quarantine camps everywhere. Some conditions are okay, some are poor. Look, here is the isolation shelter, made out of cardboard. Some of the quarantine sites are just tents pitched outdoors. This sudden and widespread outbreak in Shanghai has sent the formerly civilized city back to a primitive and savage state overnight. As many supermarkets are forced to close and thousands of delivery workers are forbidden to travel, supplies of necessities for some 26 million residents are severely disrupted. So are medical services. Shanghai reported a record 24,943 new cases on April 9th. It was the 9th consecutive day of record highs, and 5 times the infected number seen on March 28th when the city first went into lockdown. These are official figures. The actual situation should be much worse given the CCP routinely fabricates its data. It's this situation that has led Beijing to return to its harsh COVID-0 policy.
The city has now designated 8 hospitals with over 8,000 beds, and another group of designated hospitals will come into operation in 2 days. More than 100 temporary hospitals have been built with more than 160,000 beds. Further efforts will be made to reserve resources for the designated hospitals and temporary hospitals in light of the epidemic situation.
On April 3rd, the Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, deployed its troops to Shanghai overnight. Military transport planes flew to Shanghai's Hongqiao airport. Military vehicles appeared on the highway and parked in the city. The bus stations in the city were filled with uniformed soldiers, so were hotels. Medical teams from the Central War Zone were present in Shanghai. The Wall Street Journal reports that sources say the military has taken over the control of the epidemic at the grassroots level. It might make sense to see military medical staff sent to Shanghai, but why are military vehicles and non-medical soldiers? This is because there have been many odd elements about the outbreak in Shanghai, and infights among the top brass of the CCP are involved. We will discuss it later in the episode. At the end of March, Shanghai implemented a two-phase lockdown. The city was divided into two parts, Pudong and Puxi, or east of the river Pu and west of the river Pu, and each was scheduled to have a 4-day lockdown. However, the Pudong district, which was supposed to end the lockdown on April 1st, continues to have it, while the Puxi district started to shut down as planned. The entire city is essentially under lockdown. Shanghai officials have a special term called static management of the whole region. How long will Shanghai stay closed? No one knows.
因为考虑ถึง传播的风险，本次无人机执法全程奉行录像，请规范你的行为，严格遵守规定。对扰乱公共秩序的，将根据治安管理处罚法依法严处。让我们共同努力，美好的生活一定能早日回来。向原平城的居民朋友们，在疫情封控期间。
Shanghai is now besieged like an airtight iron drum. At various highway exits, light detectors have been used to prevent the escape of Shanghai residents hidden in trucks.
这个真实名称叫什么啊？都找到一个人，是赵雄。
In the past 2 weeks, the most shocking revelation was the quarantine site for infants and toddlers. The site isolates infants and toddlers under the age of 7. Hundreds of children have been separated from their parents and placed in an unfamiliar environment with only a dozen or so caregivers to look after them. Subsequently, Sina Weibo and other online communities deleted a large number of posts related to the isolation site for infants and children, and posts from parents seeking help were deleted as well, leaving only a post from the Shanghai Public Health Clinical Center dispelling the story. Under public pressure, the Shanghai government agreed to allow parents with positive diagnoses to accompany their children. Mr. Wang, who was interviewed by overseas Chinese media on April 7th, said that the quarantine site currently isolated about 500 children. More than half of them had no parental companion, and many other positive parents weren't allowed to come to stay with their children. He hoped the reporter could help appeal to the public. Mr. Wang said that the quarantine site was in poor condition, just like some of the mobile hospitals. The food was white porridge, a packet of pickles, and an egg, which most children wouldn't eat. The lights were on all night and it was difficult to fall asleep. The quarantine site didn't provide medical treatment and had barely any medicine. Children with severe symptoms couldn't get any treatment.
大家好，我住在浦东新区周浦镇。
This woman and her family contracted the virus in a closed environment and all recovered. But now, the mother faces the prospect of being forcibly taken away for quarantine.
一个星期的时间，我们自己跟病毒抗争。
Actually, the virus is not scary. What's scary is that there is no outside support. We have managed to survive a 40-degree fever in total isolation. The 4-month-old baby has survived. Now we are all better and everything is getting better. But the CDC called us today and said they were taking us away for isolation. I'm worried that the conditions at the mobile hospital are poor. My 4-month-old son won't be able to handle it. I hope everyone can help share the video and help with my appeal. Don't let them take me away. There's still justice in the society. I hope you can help me. My child is too young. Why do they have to do this? The CDC says they're taking me, my mother-in-law, and my 5-year-old daughter away. You took the 3 of us away and left an unweaned baby boy and his father at home. Do you want him to die? Let him stay with his father. Can the father take care of such a small baby?
The citywide lockdown in Shanghai has brought about a more widespread problem of famine. Some neighborhoods have been waiting for days for the residential committee to send supplies, but each family has only received 650 grams of rice. In some cases, after a long wait, each household received only half a cabbage or half a carrot. Some residents are looking in the neighborhood for wild greens for food.
There's nothing to eat or drink. We're digging up some wild greens to serve with rice.
There are also people out of town who came to Shanghai temporarily for various reasons, like this old man who came to Shanghai to see a doctor. He was driven out of the hospital and was left on the street for 2 days due to the lockdown. At first, there were trucks on the street delivering food, but they stopped. Residents upstairs noticed that the old man hadn't eaten all day and tossed food to him from upstairs. Where are you from? Jiangxi. From Jiangxi. You were here to see a doctor? To check the heart. Where do you live then, huh? No place to stay at night, Thank you, I only have this food, just a little bit of food for the stomach. In this neighborhood, the government doesn't provide supplies, and residents aren't allowed to bring back supplies they have bought.
Why aren't we allowed to bring in the supplies we bought ourselves?
You are in violation of the Epidemic Prevention Act.
Does the epidemic prevention law say anything about starving people to death in their homes?
You are not allowed to go outside.
Other neighborhoods have sent supplies 3 times. Ours has only sent once.
You aren't allowed to say such things to me.
If not to you, who do we talk to?
These aren't necessities. In some neighborhoods, supplies ordered by the residents are piled up at the entrance. The epidemic prevention workers sit idle no matter how the residents plead, saying, how are they starving to death? Now many of us are very hungry. You help us to get the takeout and deliveries. Will you help? Hey there, the one sitting in front of me. Are you pretending you don't hear me? As the lockdown continues, more neighborhoods are starting to cry out in Shanghai, and the night screens from these buildings are particularly chilling when you see no one. An online commenter sent out a plea for help, saying that even if food shortages happen to only 1% of the population in Shanghai, it would be a disaster for over 200,000 people who would be starving to death. Many online videos show people who have been starving for 4 days and are talking to the police about revolting. Some residents of the neighborhoods gathered to protest by pounding on their rice bowls. In a mobile hospital, segregated people marched with their identification numbers, shouting, "Give me back my health, give me back my freedom, let us out." In some communities, neighbors have begun to share food among themselves to relieve their plight. Because they are locked in their homes and can't leave their homes, they need some technical support. It should be noted that in this affluent city there are rich people hiding deep. Their insulated lives aren't at all what our previous videos have shown. There are some online videos showing the quarantine life of these high-end groups in Shanghai. These elites have revealed that some luxury brands including Louis Vuitton, Cartier, and Gucci have been known to send nicely packaged vegetables, afternoon tea, and Michelin meals to their clients in Shanghai. In the ultra-luxury neighborhood, the property manager holds umbrellas in the sun for the elite residents lining up for nucleic acid tests. They also offer help walking the dogs. On April 9th, Shanghai conducted another round of mass testing. This was the 4th consecutive day of citywide testing in Shanghai.
Because of the severity of Shanghai's COVID outbreak, we've already conducted several rounds of mass testing at this stage. Now it's necessary to improve our strategy. We have a general overview of the situation, but we cannot say it is crystal clear. So further testing is needed until the situation gains more clarity.
Despite repeated testing and lockdowns, the number of affected persons hasn't slowed down, which is frustrating. Why then is a large-scale military force moving into Shanghai? On April 7th, the People's Daily Commentary WeChat page published an article that called out to officials in Shanghai. The harder the epidemic prevention gets, the more important it is to do away with the lie-flat mentality. The article has since been republished by more official media, bringing into the open the fact that Shanghai officials have been lying flat, meaning doing as little as possible to resist Beijing's directives. Shanghai is the traditional political high ground in the CCP's power structure. With the exception of one Shanghai mayor who had fallen from power in 2006, almost all the rest of Shanghai's top officials have been members of the Politburo Standing Committee. The 7 members of the Politburo Standing Committee are the top circle of the CCP power. The 20th CCP National Congress is about 6 months away. Shanghai Party Secretary Li Jiang, a close friend of Xi Jinping, is the most sought-after candidate to join the Standing Committee at the 20th Congress. However, Shanghai is also the base of former party leader Jiang and the stronghold of anti-Xi forces. Although the current top leader of Shanghai, Li Jiang, is a close associate of Xi, many of the long-established officials in Shanghai belong to Jiang's faction. If Li Jiang goes to Beijing after his promotion, the local officials in Shanghai will change accordingly. It is said that there's a list of about 600 to 800 people waiting to be promoted before Li Jiang leaves Shanghai. Of course, Jiang's faction will have to resist it. Therefore, some analysts believe that these officials are taking advantage of the epidemic to cause trouble, deliberately passing the buck to each other and failing to act, making the outbreak havoc even worse. This may affect Li Jiang's career and even obstruct Xi Jinping's re-election. A video shows that a large amount of supplies from out of town were intentionally discarded.
You see, so much meat, rotting away without distributing to the residents. What's going on in Shanghai? So much pork. They would rather let it rot than send it to the people. Where is this pork coming from?
Zhejiang province.
Zhejiang is so close to Shanghai. How can the meat rot?
The vegetables are rotting. No one wants them. Look. Drones from the city have come and checked them. On April 4th, a fire broke out near the Shanghai Expo, which is being used as a temporary quarantine site. Officials reported that the fire happened at a temporary outdoor garbage dump. Officials report that as of March 31st, 7,300 people had been admitted to the Expo site, and if a fire did break out, the consequences would be unimaginable. The next day, on April 5th, the military moved into the Shanghai Expo Center. On 2 consecutive days, April 8th and 9th, the Shanghai Discipline Inspection Commission dealt with 5 grassroots officials, including a director at a health center. Therefore, a large number of troops into Shanghai is a signal to tighten control over the Shanghai officialdom. It may be an opportunity for the central government to further weaken the power of the Shanghai gang led by Jiang Zemin. At the same time, it's used to prevent civil unrest and a coup d'etat to maintain stability and avoid being elbowed by political enemies. It's to ensure the 20th National Congress in the coming fall. However, the economic damage caused by such severe controls is enormous. In addition to its special political status, Shanghai is also China's economic, financial, aviation, and port logistics center, accounting for about 4% of China's annual GDP and the base for dozens of multinational companies. The contraction in economic demand, the lack of business startups, and the massive job losses among workers caused by the extreme COVID-0 policy will undoubtedly be the biggest reason for Xi Jinping to be attacked by his political opponents. For Xi, who is seeking re-election in a few months, this poses a major concern. On April 8th, the U.S. State Department expressed concern over the control of the outbreak in China, while approving the closure of the Shanghai consulate and allowing the voluntary evacuation of non-essential staff. It also issued a travel warning for U.S. citizens on their trips to China based on the Chinese government's arbitrary enforcement and restrictions on the outbreak. A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman expressed strong dissatisfaction and firm opposition to the U.S. decision and has made serious protests to the U.S. side. He added that the Chinese Communist Party's anti-epidemic policy is scientific and effective, and that he is confident that Shanghai and other places will overcome the new wave of the outbreak.